say. So there we go.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, we'll get there.
Definitely space to be flexible with your diet.
No, I'm very excited to get into it. Are you ready to start? We have a few people on, but a couple of people said they're going to join late. All right.
Sounds good. It sounds good. Thanks for hosting and running all this.
Of course, I am really excited. So my name is Madeline, and I am the founder of Passion Fruit, and we do support through education and support groups on Facebook, social media posts, and we're working on PCOS focused products. So today we are joined by Dr. Laura Meyers, a naturopathic doctor who has a wonderful and informative platform on social media. I love your social media. Not only is it extremely educational, but from someone who also has PCOS, it is relatable and it is super funny. Like, I love the reality dose that you bring to your social media.
Thanks for thinking I'm funny. Sometimes I think I'm the only person who laughs at my jokes, but I try to have a good time with it. I think that's like part of, laughter is the best medicine. Sometimes you just gotta like lighten the mood a bit for the things that you go through, right? When you're dealing with PCOS. So
100%. Yeah. So why did you choose to focus your platform on PCOS? Is your practice also focused on PCOS specifically, or just your social media platforms?
Yeah, so my private practice focuses on PCOS, fertility and pregnancy care, but mostly on social media, on my Instagram and Facebook, I engage with like the PCOS audience. And really what got me interested in doing this and becoming a naturopathic doctor in general is through my own journey with PCOS. So I was diagnosed at 18. I always kind of knew something was wrong because I was never getting my period, but I couldn't talk to my mom about it because it was super awkward. and I just was kind of also scared to bring it up to my doctor because they never asked. So I'm not going to mention anything. Yep. And then eventually at 18, I brought it up, and I was also having a lot of these symptoms that I knew that were just like off. Like my skin was always oily. I had really thin hair as like a teen. And I was gaining weight really fast, despite like eating exactly the way my sisters did and exercising. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. And so I got that diagnosis. And then, like many other people, you go through the journey of seeing an endocrinologist, your family doctor, gynecologist, all these doctors. And really it comes down to always the advice ends up being, you got to lose weight and you have to take the pill. And I found both of those suggestions were very frustrating because one, it wasn't that I was unaware that I needed to lose weight. It was just like, why is this weight happening in the first place? This is so frustrating. And I was doing all these different things to try to manage it to begin with, and that was never acknowledged. And then the other component, like I'm totally not against using medications or being on the birth control pill, but for me, I wanted more options, and I didn't want, and for me, a big fear around PCOS was the fertility component. And so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just doing anything to mask it, that I wasn't going to do anything that's going to like potentially just cover up problems that I'd be facing later on. So that's kind of what led me to working with a naturopathic doctor myself and finding a big improvement in my health, and then wanting to share that information with others like myself.
Yeah, I love it. I think like a lot of women, I identify with your story so much. My story is that I got the under the dermal implant for birth control, and it set so many things off for me, and I started gaining weight so rapidly, and this was about 18 for me. And I didn't realize, I hadn't really looked into it, my own health at that point. And I didn't realize I had PCOS. So it just made every symptom I ever had flare up, and made weight gain like times 10 worse. And so, and then that happened to me. I went to a lot of doctors, and I said, I am on a diet where I'm eating 1,200 calories a day. I work out every single day, and I'm still gaining like a pound a week. Like something is wrong. And they were like, the answer is obviously you need to lose weight. And I'm like, really? Really?
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
It is so frustrating. So kudos to you for being out there and helping women actually get answers and options to just the regular route of someone saying lose weight and get on the pill. You know, there needs to be more than that standard answer, because that's really just, that's treating a symptom rather than the cause. And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
And the potential of like causing harm versus a benefit, right? Like, and just being able to have more advocacy into your health. And I find so many times people aren't believed about their story. And I think that was the most frustrating thing for me when I was trying to get help, was just like not being believed. Like, I was like, do you want to just come live with me and see what I eat?
Yeah, I'd be like, I eat 1,200 calories a day. They'd be like, really? And I'm like, yes, really. So could you explain to us the most common symptoms of PCOS and how you, a naturopathic doctor, would determine a diagnosis?
Okay, so in terms of how you diagnose PCOS, let's start there, just because there is a specific criteria that is used, and it's called the Rotterdam criteria. And what it basically is 3 different signs or symptoms that you need to have 2 out of the 3 in order to be considered a diagnosis of PCOS. So the first symptom is long or absent menstrual cycles. Sometimes so they describe it as irregular. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if you have irregular cycles like 28 and then 32 or 30 and 35, but really it's about long cycles that are greater than 35 days in length. Having that multiple times a year is showing signs that there's a lack of ovulation happening. So that's one of the criteria. The second criteria is signs of high androgens, either through symptoms or in lab work. So androgens are those male sex hormones that females also have, but we have it in a different balance than compared to the male physiology. And so physical signs would look like things like acne, hair loss, excess hair growth that can happen, sometimes a deepening of the voice, but that can be hard to kind of figure out if that's happening, and then excess body hair as well. But you kind of have to, it's all within a spectrum of how much is considered excess, because it is also quite normal to have some upper lip hair and some extra hair on the body. And I don't want to like pathologize like hair on women's body, because that's also a normal thing.
Yes.
And and then in terms of like lab work signs of high androgens, these would be things like your free testosterone specifically that we're looking if that's elevated. Sometimes it could look like elevated DHES. That's another androgen that we can see elevated in PCOS. And then the third criteria is the ultrasound that is done when you're suspecting someone has PCOS, to look for polycystic ovaries or enlarged ovaries. Sometimes there won't be polycystic ovaries present, but there could be enlargement of the ovary in general that's suggestive of PCOS. So we look for those 3 criteria, and if you meet any of the 2, then you're considered to have PCOS. So you could actually have no cysts on your ovaries, but have the other 2 and still have PCOS, or a mixture of whichever. And other symptoms that kind of go along with PCOS outside of that are things like fluctuations in weight, fatigue, cravings, tiredness, brain fog, a lot of skin symptoms that happen, not just acne, but you'll see things like acanthosis nigricans, eczema, psoriasis, which we can touch about later, but different skin symptoms that happen. I'm trying to think. And there's also just higher rates of other conditions. So we call this comorbidities. So we can see things like sleep apnea happening, anxiety, depression, higher rates of disordered eating, and thyroid disease as well. So it's a fun time.
A basket of fun.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a long list of things that can be attributed to PCOS, but in terms of being diagnosed, it's with that criteria, the Rotterdam criteria, that we determine.
Yeah. Very interesting. I think specifically I've noticed the skin symptoms and the mental health aspects are two things that I think are not as talked about as much in the PCOS community as I think they should be, because I think it just, for example, the skin symptoms, I have a couple anonymous questions for you later. So many people in the support group said, you know, I have these skin symptoms and I don't even know if they're connected to my PCOS. My doctor hasn't told me anything about it, but I kind of think it might be. And I'm like, yeah, probably. Yeah.
And I think the reason that that kind of happens is because in a lot of medical settings, everyone has their own specialty, right? You see a dermatologist for one thing, you see an endocrinologist for another, and they're not necessarily having conversations about the fact that you have PCOS. So we're just kind of like treating everything separately and not recognizing the interconnectedness of it all.
So interesting. So what are your recommendations for how women can manage PCOS in their daily lives?
Okay, so in terms of,
I know this is a big question. That's a lot.
I know it is a big question. So it kind of comes down to understanding what is kind of driving the PCOS symptoms in the first place. So one, I just want to clarify that PCOS, we do know there's somewhat of a genetic component to it. Like if there's family history of diabetes and your other women in your family are females who have female sex who have PCOS in your family, then you're more likely to. So there's a predisposition that's happening. And then there's things that kind of drive the symptoms to be worse. And they are insulin resistance. I don't know if that's something you guys talked in your group about, but there's insulin resistance, inflammation, and then we also see some like cortisol, our stress hormone, dysregulation happening in PCOS as well, where we're not releasing stress hormones at the appropriate times, or we have heightened stress hormones compared to the average population.
Really?
And then it can also be explained why a lot of people have that tired and wired thing where they like are so tired all day and then they can't fall asleep and then they need to sleep in late and their whole sleep rhythm is off. But
oh my gosh, I have a whole new rabbit hole of research I need to do tonight now.
So that's another fascinating area of PCOS and kind of explaining why we have some symptoms. And then the other thing is that we can have like dysregulated appetite hormones. So like leptin resistance and higher levels of ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, that can kind of set things off as well. So with that said, it's like we kind of have to address PCOS in a plan that looks at those driving factors. And so for insulin resistance and for inflammation and for appetite dysregulation, the biggest things are going to be lifestyle and dietary habits that kind of work to balance blood sugar as much as possible. So things that I tend to work a lot with my patients on are limiting snacking throughout the day and having three large meals that are quite filling, that are focused on getting enough protein for your body size, enough fiber for your body size, and lots of fruits and vegetables and anti-inflammatory foods like that are high in omega-3s, like wild fish, or not wild fish, but like salmon and like sardines, like those fatty fish, and then healthy fats like olive oil and nuts and seeds, things like that. And then we also have to look at lifestyle factors. So doing an exercise plan that isn't going to create more inflammation or more pain in your body, like that is attributed perfectly for you, whether that even is just walking for some people at this point. And then really working on stress and sleep, because all of those things can make insulin resistance and inflammation worse and all that stuff. So it's really like a multifaceted way that you have to approach treating PCOS. It's not, I feel like there's such a heavy focus all the time on just diet, like diet your way out of it. And we forget about like how stress and our sleep and all these things affect it as well. So if you have a diet that's stressing you out, then
cure your PCOS with keto.
And
oh
like
my gosh,
spend your life savings on like all this butter.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. If you put butter in your coffee
Yeah.
every morning, then you will no longer have PCOS.
Right? I know.
I wish it was so easy.
I know. I know.
So, as a naturopathic doctor, is that one of the ways that your treatments are going to differ from an MD? You're not going to recommend as much medication. You're going to go more for that
Yeah.
lifestyle. How is that going to differ from you
So
being an ND rather than an MD?
yeah, great question. So in terms of how I approach things, it's really about, number one, it's about informed consent and recognizing what are the values and the goals of the patient specifically. So as I mentioned, like I'm totally not against medication, and sometimes those things are necessary to get the results that you want or work for that person's lifestyle at the moment.
Mhm.
And so my kind of way of approaching things is having good conversations with patients of what they're really looking for and what to achieve and what are their options, what are the risks and benefits of each one. And so the ways we kind of approach this as naturopathic doctors, because we don't have rights to prescribe medication, is we do dietary and lifestyle, but then also supplements and botanicals and acupuncture are some of the things within our scope that help with PCOS.
Love it. I love that you're
Yeah.
really taking the time to listen to women, because I think that is so valuable. And definitely in my experience personally, that's the thing that lacks the most, is just having a medical practitioner who's really willing to actually just listen to me, not just about
Yeah.
my problems, but also where I'm hoping to go in my journey of working on it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because I think sometimes we can feel like our options, or like you go online and things are so polarizing. It's like,
Mhm.
don't ever take the pill, or you should take the pill, it's totally fine. And
Mhm.
or like, don't ever take this or do that. And instead of recognizing, okay, well, like, what does this person need? What are their goals? What are their values? What's going to work to fit into their life? And sometimes that changes too. So really getting to know somebody is, I find, a really valuable part of someone's care.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And I love that. So we kind of already touched on this, but often the prescription from a doctor is to lose weight. That's the prescribed method to make your PCOS better or cure your PCOS, is just lose weight. So what is your outlook on that, or your comments on that, as far as that just being what women are told to do and told to walk away with? Obviously you were told that at one point. And
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we definitely did touch on this and my frustrations around that. I think there's a few things that we have to acknowledge. One, not everybody with PCOS is overweight or obese. Some people are actually could even be underweight or of a normal weight. And so giving somebody just this blatant advice to lose weight, what does that really mean and look like for somebody who probably doesn't need to? And then it's also, I feel like, a harmful conversation to be having with somebody who potentially does need to lose weight, but is trying so many things, and you're not having a deep conversation about, okay, what have you been trying? What doesn't work? What has been working? And really help to educate somebody of why the weight gain happened to begin with. Because it's a symptom. It's not something someone's done to themselves and has caused their PCOS. It's a symptom of PCOS. And so it's not going to resolve the way that other weight loss things work, because we have to be looking at it from the approach of like, what is driving PCOS to happen in the first place? And by doing that, then we can kind of help to lose weight. And also, I think the frustrating thing too is when someone says, oh, lose weight and then your PCOS will be fixed. So it's like, well, how much? And so if we look at the research, it's about 5 to 10% of body weight loss, like that could help to reset your menstrual cycle and reduce some of your symptoms. And some people are going to fall higher than that 10%, and some people are going to fall less than that 5%. And really why that does help sometimes is because fat cells act as endocrine modulators. So they modulate our hormones and shift our hormones. So of course, if we have less of those fat cells that are messing up our hormones, then it will help to make our hormone and our hormonal symptoms a lot better. But the hard part is getting there, getting that to come off and to stay off. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I love what you had to say. That was great.
Yeah.
So for wrapping up, I know I said this would be a half hour and I've already taken a lot of your time, and we have questions
oh my God,
from my group.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah,
I want to make sure that these questions from the group get answered. So just my final question, I'll just say, if you're just going to say what's the most important thing that you would just like to tell people about PCOS, what would it be?
I think it would be not to aim for perfection and to look at all areas of your life that need support. So it's not about doing your diet perfectly. It's not about taking your supplements perfectly. It's not about exercising perfectly. It's more about being consistent and what's going to be sustainable for you, that like looks at all aspects of your health, physical, mental, emotional, all those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A holistic approach to PCOS.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay. I'm going to get into these questions from group members. So I have 4 questions for you. I got more than that, but these were ones that were asked quite a few times, and some of them were just interesting. Okay. And so rather than having group members come on and ask them, I'm going to ask them so that these women can stay anonymous and create a completely shame-free environment, because it's just me asking, and I have no shame about this. So the first question is, I had someone tell me I shouldn't use a heating pad if I have ovarian cysts. Is this true?
Okay, so firstly, no, it is not true. I just want to clarify too. So ovarian cysts, I think sometimes there's a lot of confusion of what that means. So technically a cyst is just an unmature egg. It's a follicle, a cyst, follicle, unmatured egg. They all mean the same thing. All people who menstruate have them, and sometimes it is normal to have more. In polycystic is when we have a lot of them happening at once that are unmatured eggs. And then some people will get ovarian cysts that are like just one large cyst that's kind of just growing on the ovary that hasn't ruptured, and it kind of just stays there. And then people will get those to rupture, and they can be very painful. So that's different than what polycystic ovaries are. I think maybe the concern around a heating pad for PCOS would be that it would bring more blood flow or something. Like maybe that was their theory around it, but no, it's not a thing. You can totally use a heating pad when you have PCOS.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So next question is, I have skin problems, including dark creases and cysts on my legs and pelvic area. I've never found an effective treatment. Could this be related to my PCOS?
For sure. So the first thing that they were describing, at the darkening of the skin. So that sounds like something called acanthosis nigricans. And we see it's a darkening of the skin that happens at the back of the neck, usually, sometimes the armpit, sometimes like at the bikini line, like the groin area. And that is one thing that happens as well. The cysts that they're talking about, sounds something to like hidradenitis suppurativa, which is another skin condition that is also related to PCOS. And so to touch on skin conditions in general and why we have so many of these things pop up with PCOS, whether it's eczema, psoriasis, acne, oily skin, acanthosis nigricans, skin tags, hidradenitis suppurativa, all these things is because of the insulin resistance. So when we have insulin resistance, we have higher levels of insulin that are circulating in our bloodstream that actually should be taking glucose, our blood sugar, into our cells, but instead the signal's not working properly. So we get a buildup of insulin in the blood. Insulin in the blood not only tells our ovaries to create more testosterone, but it also tells our skin cells to make more skin cells. And so that's why we can see these skin symptoms happening, because of insulin resistance that's driving the production of more skin cells to happen, and oil production because of testosterone.
That is so interesting. I did not know.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
You are giving me so
Yeah.
many different rabbit holes of research I'm going to need to go down to. Okay, last question. I think you already touched on this too already, but I have PCOS and I feel like I have brain fog all the time. Are they related? And is there anything I can do to stop feeling so out of it all the time?
Yeah. So brain fog and PCOS, totally a thing. It's not like a medical term, brain fog. Like if you went to your doctor and you're like, I have brain fog, they'd just be like, okay, like,
Yeah.
but if you experience it, you know, it's like you just can't concentrate, like words don't come to you. Like it happens to me still. And I've been managing my PCOS for years. So it's like, it sucks. And so what can we do about it? So first thing is understanding why the brain fog is happening. And PCOS, it could be a lot of things that are going on. So one, it could be we have higher rates of migraines that happen in PCOS. I'm not sure exactly why, but it could be that prodrome. It's like that beginning phase of a migraine where maybe you're not getting a full-on migraine, but you're experiencing brain fog and lack of concentration. Number two, brain fog is also could be related to things like anemia. This could be from low iron or low B12, or it could even be from low vitamin D, where we see a lot of tiredness that happens. So getting those things tested by your family doctor or naturopathic doctor to make sure you have optimal levels is important. Another thing it could be is thyroid conditions that are often related. People with PCOS often have thyroid conditions, specifically low thyroid, so hypothyroidism, and that could be a symptom. So making sure you're getting your thyroid checked to see if you need to be on medication or other support for your thyroid. There's also higher rates of sleep apnea for those with PCOS. So if you are snoring at night, grinding your teeth, or gasping for air in the middle of the night, getting a sleep test done would be important just to rule that out as a cause of like maybe you're not getting as much oxygen at night that you need for a good night's sleep. And then also we have a higher level, we have so many things. We have higher levels of like inflammation that happen. We have higher inflammatory cells. So sometimes we can be just hyperreactive to other things happening. So like you get a cold, but like maybe somebody else doesn't get sick, but maybe you just experience it as brain fog and tiredness. And then as well with insulin resistance, if we don't have good glucose management, dips in our blood sugar or really high spikes in our blood sugar can make us feel a little out of it. That can make a brain fog feeling happen. I'm trying to think, there's stuff I missed. There's probably stuff I missed, but those are the main ones. So it's like having a conversation of like, what is going on for you personally, and what can we kind of tease out as like a possible cause for the brain fog.
You gave a good list of things that you could
Sorry,
rule
like
out and figure it out. No, I love it. The more information, the better, right? That's what we're about, education.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then reflecting to see what kind of resonates for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been so great. I've loved having this talk with you, and you answered the questions so well and so thoroughly. And I just want to really thank you. I appreciate you for coming on here and answering these questions.
It was my pleasure.
Oh,
anytime. I love. Yeah.
Do you want to give your social media so people can find you?
Oh yeah, sure. You can follow me at Dr.Laura Meyers. So it's Dr.LauraMeyers. And I also run a free Facebook group, support group. I haven't been active on it lately just because we've moved and my life has been a little chaotic, but I'm mostly active on Instagram, and you can definitely send me a message if you have any questions.